I'm Colin Singer, immigration lawyer and managing partner of Immigration.ca. Canada Immigration News Articles, May 2015. Canada passes anti-terror legislation despite widespread outrage. Despite recent widespread protests and negative public opinion, Canada's ruling Conservative Party has succeeded in passing sweeping anti-terror legislation with a battery of legal scholars, civil liberties groups, and opposition politicians saying it will replace the country's healthy democracy with a quasi-police state. All that remains is an endorsement from Canada's Senate. However, lingering public anger over the legislation also suggests that Prime Minister Harper has succeeded in dividing his parliamentary opposition, which could work against him when Canadians go to the polls for a national election in the fall. No legislation in memory has united such a diverse array of prominent opponents as the proposed legislation. The campaign to stop Bill C-51 grew to include virtually every civil rights group, law professors, retired judges, authors, editorialists, and public intellectuals in Canada. According to Daniel Terrien, Privacy Commissioner of Canada, the scale of information sharing being proposed is unprecedented, and the scope of the new powers conferred by the Act is excessive, particularly as these powers affect ordinary Canadians, and the safeguards protecting against unreasonable loss of privacy are seriously deficient. All Canadians would be caught in this web. Defending the bill, Public Safety Minister Stephen Blaney lashed out against key misconceptions promoted by so-called experts, especially what he called completely false and ridiculous claims that legitimate protest could be targeted as terrorism. Blaney and Justice Minister Peter MacKay have described the bill as a reasonable and proportionate response to the threat of jihadi terrorism. The Prime Minister himself has derided its opponents as being out of touch with Canadian values. The question must be asked, however, who is out of touch? Last month, hundreds of thousands of ordinary Canadians signed petitions urging the bill to be scrapped and took to the streets in a national day of protest. Critics of the legislation say the eminent law gives Canadian spy agencies sweeping new powers to investigate and disrupt broadly defined threats to public safety, with language that makes no distinction between terrorist plots and legitimate political protests and demonstrations. The bill also neglects to provide any increased oversight of the country's vastly empowered chief spy agency, the Canadian Security and Intelligence Service. Introduced in the wake of two lone wolf terrorist attacks last year, the bill gained widespread initial support amongst ordinary Canadians. But in the weeks of criticism that followed, the polls churned and a majority began to express opposition. It remains unclear whether their anger will survive to make a difference in the general election this October. Source: The Guardian.